All right, so we have a very simple like obstacle avoidance game here. You can only move side to side. There is no shooting capability, and I I love how it Today is a very exciting day because I do believe this is the first Mistral model that I've tested on the channel, so I am quite excited. With that, they came out with a new coding specific model called Devstral-Small-2507. So Devstral-Small did previously exist, however, this is the newly updated version as denoted by these 4 numbers appended to the title, which I do believe just stands for July of 2025, as the model updates sometimes tend to have a date reference so we know like when they came out. There are some key features here, and truthfully there's not really a lot to talk about, so we are going to rather quickly just jump into actually running and playing with this model. But there are some interesting things to note right here, where specifically it has the Apache 2.0 license, which is nice to see. It's designed to excel at agentic coding tasks, and it is lightweight, designed to run within a single 24GB video card like a 4090 or a 32GB RAM Apple Silicon machine with its unified memory. It has a 128K context window, and impressively, even though I don't pay too much attention to these benchmarks and things like that, it does score significantly higher than a lot of other models here on this benchmark, at least that they have decided to include alongside it. So it should hypothetically be pretty good at coding, and we will actually go ahead and test this in VS Code with Cline. However, I am also just going to play with it in LM Studio, doing some generic kind of like more fun HTML script testing and things of that sort. Aside from that, they do have some cool usage commands, and they list out all of the things that you can actually use this for local inference. I am going to be opting to use it with LM Studio today, as it is just a little more aesthetically pleasing to record my screen when using LM Studio. And what I find very cool here is they actually have this example of using it with Cline if we scroll down all the way. I know it is a little hard to see right here, but they just task it to build a video game using Cline within VS Code. They have the sample prompt right here, which we will likely use, but I may change it a little to be a little more in my style, one could say. And then basically we just kind of see this. So it is pretty cool, and I do like having this example here along with the prompt. I think that is quite valuable. Aside from that, the only other thing I would like to make note of is the sampling parameters that I am opting to use right here are pulled from this Unsloth blog post on actually running this model. I am just using the LM Studio community quant at Q4KM, but I did just see these sampling parameters on Reddit, so I looked at the Unsloth blog post, and I am just using these 2 sampling params right here. So with that, let's just kind of jump into it. I have the model loaded into LM Studio. It is just the GGUF from the LM Studio community. It is the Q4KM quantization, and I have the context length set to 32,768. With all of that, this is running on a 5090 mobile, which is a 24GB card, and it is currently using around 20 gigs of VRAM. I do find that on this version of Linux, if I have NVTop and LM Studio open at the same time, NVTop stops working, so that's why I'm just using NVIDIA SMI here to show that, just as kind of a random side note. With that, I think we are just going to begin by testing it in here in LM Studio just to kind of get a feel for it. And truthfully, I have not done a Steve's PC test in a while, so that is something that I've kind of been longing for, and I look forward to now doing one. Now, I find that it's difficult more and more, like as time progresses, to do these tests, because truthfully, like, it's fun, but at the same time, folks are not really using models for stuff like this. They're using them for agentic coding tasks and things that encompass having actual code bases and things like that. So I like doing this because I find it entertaining, and I actually really enjoy seeing the results of the different models. But I do have to understand and say that it's obviously kind of an outdated test, probably like years now. All right, so I don't pay too much attention to the token speed when I'm using Linux in this because it's very power limited, but that was around 28 tokens per second. Interestingly, and something I noticed is it actually went ahead and generated multiple pages for the website as denoted by this folder structure right here that we see. That is kind of nice to see. There was one other model that did that. I don't remember, but it was the only other model prior to this that I've seen that actually went ahead and generated multiple pages for a site. So that is fairly cool, although it is more work for me to have to save these files. But we'll go ahead and check this out and see how Steve's PC repair website looks. We now have everything placed in the correct directory, so let's just go ahead and open this. I will just use Google Chrome since it doesn't have any extensions or anything on it. All right, I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty bad. Again, it's not like an HTML specific model, or it's not designed for beautiful UI like UIGen or the GLM family of models, but it did do some things well in that this is like a static, consistent website. And let's see. Okay, so the hyperlinks do work properly, and that is always nice to see that it has a properly multi-page website. So that is good, at least. All right, I guess I wasn't quite sure what I was expecting here. I may perhaps have become spoiled by GLM 432B. With that, let's just go ahead and do one more thing here in LM Studio, and then we'll move into Cline and VS Code, as that's obviously going to be of more interest to a lot of folks. So I am just asking it to do the historic Python synthwave style game test. I like that it tells me first and foremost here to make sure that I have that specific dependency installed, or Pygame, which is always good to see that it's just being consistent and comprehensive in guiding the user on how to run the code. Okay, so this is always frustrating. It's told me I need to provide my own background image, which is just requires the human to do more work, which is what we're trying to stray away from these days. So I will just pull one in. All right, let's see what we've got here. I don't have a lot of photos on this computer, so I used one of me with my robots at Fan Expo 2023, and it obviously did work, but it's just kind of funny to see. All right, so we have a very simple like obstacle avoidance game here. You can only move side to side. There is no shooting capability, and I love how it I mean, wow, that's quite funny. Well, I am now happy that it actually forced me to do work and put an image in. It does not close very gracefully if you lose, but the score did seem to iterate properly. Overall, a mid result, as the youth would say, but it did kind of function properly, which is what we are after. With that, let's hop into VS Code now and play with it using some of the Cline example that they have given us. As we are going to be using this through LM Studio still to actually like handle having the model loaded and served and everything, I am just using the server option in this developer console here. Truthfully, I'm not too in tune with this, but it seems to work relatively decently. So I do have that set up right now here in VS Code along with Cline. And basically, I don't want to just word for word copy paste the demo game script that they had listed here in this example, but perhaps we can make a few specifically tailored changes to it and then go ahead and let it run. I've taken their rather mundane instructions here and changed them into a kind of side scroller 2D platformer where we have Mega Slap Slap 4000. It is a web-based video game where it's a simple 2D adventure game where the protagonist, Slap Slap 4000, goes on an adventure in the world Mega. There are some beautiful and erotic aliens which are enemies, and the goal is basically to have a shootout with the aliens. The player can utilize the Blaster 5600, and basically they lose if they get shot by the erotic aliens. With that, let's just go ahead and paste this into VS Code in Cline right here as our task. I will perhaps go ahead and full screen this. It is auto-approved, enable and read, okay? And it is in act mode. So basically, as we go right here, this should then go ahead and begin to create our game. Protagonist Slap Slap 4000 that the player controls with arrow keys. Opponents, beautiful and erotic aliens. It's starting by creating the basic project structure, so it is making the directory Mega Slap Slap 4000 and changing into it, and then making an assets directory in there. I do need to allow it to go ahead and do so, so I will click run command. All right. Oh, I don't know why it's in that content environment, but that's okay. We'll just let it roll with that. And as we can see right here, it is vibe coding or agentic coding. I do believe there is a new terminology for that that's supposedly better, but it does elude me in the present moment. All right, I need to allow it to save our index.html. So basically I have to kind of manually approve certain things like creating files and I think running commands, but it is now making our CSS file. So it is just really cool to see. This is something that I don't think will ever get old to me, is seeing the code just be generated in front of you without you actually doing anything. It is quite futuristic, I guess, even though now is the future. Okay, so far we have our index file, our style.css file, and then the game JavaScript file. So those would generally be the three associated scripts that we would need for a very simple task such as this. And now it is just kind of going ahead and fixing certain errors that it has found in the scripts. There are some game loop structure and TypeScript errors. Now it seems to have successfully fixed all of the errors that it saw as it is creating a README file on how to run the game. Use the arrow keys to move slap 4000 around on the screen. Click anywhere on, oh, okay. We'll read it when it's done. Okay, good. Avoid getting shot by the beautiful and erotic alien opponents. Your goal is to survive for more than 25 seconds. We have a game UI. Open index.html in your web browser and then begin playing. All right, we're getting there. Yeah, I do believe it will automatically open it in the browser here for me, actually. Oh wow. Well, all right. I'm going to be honest. This is perhaps not what I had envisioned in my mind, but I wonder if a shot would be the alien hitting you. So I have just gone ahead and asked it to make some changes to the game where basically I just critiqued it saying it was too basic, the aliens were not beautiful or erotic, and the cubes really let it down. So I'm asking it to put in placeholder images for the player.png and alien.png, as well as kind of just go ahead and do better. Thank you for the feedback. I understand we need to improve the visuals and make it more of a side scroller with proper images. Let me update this game implementation. I have to say I'm somewhat impressed with the troubleshooting that it just did, where basically it was trying to make the placeholder images so the code would actually run even if I didn't supply them. It tried a few different things and it didn't work, so it just eventually, it just basically made them within the subdirectory as empty or blank PNG files, but that ultimately did work and it moved past the error there it was having with trying to make those placeholder images. So I am impressed with that. Yeah. Okay. So right as I was saying, like, oh, it's good it summed up its progress because that could stop it from breaking, it broke. Let's just do proceed anyways and see if maybe it can get itself back on track. But all right, it did. That's quite good. All right. It is now reporting that the task has been completed and it wants to go ahead and open the game. So let's just go ahead and see what. Wow. Whoa. All right. I'm unable to move now. I have taken a shot, and the time is not iterating. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Let's close this, and let's just put in the placeholder images before we run this, as it will probably give us some more knowledge. You won. You survived for 25 seconds. Nice. The moment of truth. I have 2 sprites generated by our friendly GPT-4o neighborhood model, and now we will just go ahead and open this in Chrome and see how the game goes. Very good. So, obviously, so as we saw, the images don't actually load in the game for some reason, so I'm just going to ask it to fix that. Okay, so this does seemingly, I believe we've run into just like a context length limitation, which is to be expected when you are capped at 32,768, at least like I am, and using an agentic coding thing like this. If this was something that we just did in LM Studio and had it create these separate scripts, it would likely go ahead and work, but obviously that is more cumbersome and not necessarily the ideal method for things like this. So unfortunately, that just kind of is probably where I'm going to be left off because it's a limitation of the hardware I have available to me. I do believe if we were using this with a 128K context length, it would have likely gone ahead and just said, oh, okay, the images aren't loading here, I fixed them, everything's all set. In addition to that, this is a Q4KM quantization, so it is relatively quantized, which for specific coding models is probably more noticeable than just perhaps a general chat model. Don't quote me on that, it's just personal feelings. If I was able to use the PC behind me, which I'm unfortunately not right now, I could have maxed the context length and used a slightly more quality quant, maybe a Q8 or something. I think that's really going to wrap this up. We did a few little small tests, and I really like being able to just kind of follow their tutorial down here for testing it with Cline and VS Code. Unfortunately, we didn't necessarily have this level of success. However, we were using a Q4KM quant with a relatively limited context length. Overall, this model does seem very potent in terms of its potential capabilities. I do think that with a higher context length and a higher quantization, this would definitely be quite impressive, especially for the size. It did seemingly have a really decent command of being able to just perform agentic coding actions, even if our games were perhaps not quite what we had imagined. With that, this was my first time testing a Mistral model on the channel, which is quite exciting, at least for me. That is going to wrap it up. I will try to be posting more. I've been struggling to find time to do a lot of videos. So with that, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.